Hey guys, I'm Guy. We're all guys. Whoever you are, you're a guy. Welcome. Emergency stream and podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you're listening to the pod, that's great. How about a 5-star review on Apple Podcast? Appreciate that very much. If you leave a question in the review, that's how you get in the mailbag, which will start back up soon. Breaking news this afternoon, Kyle Shanahan announced that the 49ers have fired defensive coordinator Steve Wilks, as expected. No surprise here. We've been talking about this for a couple days, and it just seemed like this relationship was doomed. Early on, you could see that there were discrepancies about the ideas that they each had about how to run defense. It wasn't working. In Steve Wilks' defense, he'd come to the 49ers without any of his own guys, and his job was to step in and learn what the 49ers do. And we could tell early on it was not a great match. He zero blitzed against the Vikings. I was at the press conference where he opened it up by apologizing or basically saying I knew I was wrong. Very weird. I don't think I've ever experienced that. It was a little odd, and it came because Kyle Shanahan had come out and said it immediately, like, yeah, we shouldn't have done that. And it put Wilks in an odd spot, and also just alerted us to the fact that there was a disconnect, things that some players said over time, and this is not a surprising place to be. I'm going to go through a bunch of names. I'm going to give you one name that I really like that nobody else is talking about. We'll get to that. But I want to go through everything here and kind of make sure we hit all the obvious names and the ones we like. The name I'm going to give you that's not obvious, it's not at the top of the list, but I think is a very intriguing name. Okay, guys, we've talked about for the last couple of actually, before I get into names, I want to say one other thing. Kyle Shanahan spoke yesterday to the media and was asked twice about Steve Wilks and said it was pretty clear that he was just trying to get through the day. I expect all our coaches to be back. I think the answers he gave yesterday, even though he didn't say this, he said the opposite. He did not give ringing votes of confidence or, hey, I know you guys think me and Steve don't see eye to eye necessarily on defense, but no, Steve is going to be back. So I think even if you thought after Sunday this was likely, I think you thought it was more likely after Monday. Watching Kyle talk, I certainly did. And then this morning, even after Kyle said, I expect all our coaches to be back, 2 coaches were gone, including Anthony Lynn. No surprise here. No surprise at all. Okay. Let's get to the obvious names first. Bill Belichick. Great. Home run. That'd be fantastic. One of the all-time greats. Unlikely. I think it's fair to say that's unlikely. It would be welcome. Would Bill want to do that? Would Kyle want to do that? Would the Niners pay for it? I do think the Niners would pay. I think Jed York would pay up, whatever it cost. Does Bill want to come be a defensive coordinator on the other side of the country? I think that's probably the biggest obstacle, bigger even than Kyle. I think if you're Kyle and Bill Belichick wants to coach with you, you do it. Just like, hey, well, how would Kyle coach Tom Brady? Well, Tom Brady was available multiple times, and a couple times, one time actually was not available, and Kyle still reached out to him. So that shows that Kyle would be willing to change, because you would have had to change some of what you do for Bill, or rather for Tom, be willing to adjust a little bit for Bill. I don't think Kyle would be scared off by people saying, well, you only won because you got Belichick as your DC. You do whatever it takes to win. So I think Kyle would be open to it. I think Bill would be the one that stands in the way here, but that's obviously at the top of everybody's wish list. Mike Vrabel, I think, is the top of everybody's wish list. A couple coaches who might have been fits for the Niners have been hired recently. Shane Bowen, who was the defensive coordinator for the Titans, right? What was one of the Niners' problems this year? They really struggled in run defense. Shane Bowen and the Titans had very good numbers in the run game. He was hired a couple weeks ago by the New York Giants. 7 days before that, on January 31st, the Packers hired Boston College head coach Jeff Hafley. Jeff Hafley was a secondary coach for the 49ers a couple years ago. So he would have been a candidate had this happened 2 weeks ago, you would think. But he's not a candidate anymore. So Shane Bowen out. Now, would Mike Vrabel want the job? Would Mike Vrabel want to be a defensive coordinator for a year? Mike Vrabel could sit this year out. He's a rich man and feel good that he'd become a head coach in 2025, you would think. But if you're him, it's how I would look at it if I were Vrabel. So I get to take a little break from all the other stuff that being a head coach requires. And when I start interviewing in 2025 again, or at the end of 2024 for for head coaching jobs as the defensive coordinator of the 49ers, I'm going to have some incredible insight because I just sat in the building with Kyle Shanahan, one of the best offensive coaches in the NFL, and a third of the league are guys running his stuff. So I'm going to be a better head coach for having coached with Kyle Shanahan. And the flip side of it, they need me specifically against this guy, Patrick Mahomes. The last 2 times that the Titans and Mike Vrabel have played Patrick Mahomes, Mahomes has combined in those 2 games for 1 win and 1 loss, for 1 touchdown pass, for 2 interceptions, and he was sacked 8 times. So Mike Vrabel would be a home run higher. I think probably more realistic than Bill, although I would not put it on the very realistic list. Just seems like it'd be a lot for a guy who clearly wants to be a head coach. Rand Carthen, who came from the 49ers, went to Tennessee. Those 2 butted heads. So what kind of insight would the Niners have on that relationship? But Mike Vrabel's on the list of guys who, if he's interested, you got to hire him. He only has 1 year as a defensive coordinator under his belt. He was a linebacker coach for a few years before that. His 1 year as a DC in Houston, not statistically impressive. That team was not very good. They didn't have great defensive talent. They didn't have good offense. I think you'd have to look at what happened, how things went in Tennessee, and try to figure out how much of that was him, how much of that was Shane Bowen. But he was involved in the defense there, and the fact that he's got Patrick Mahomes' number, I think would bode very well for him. Another name I already mentioned earlier, so I won't spend much time on it here. You can go watch that video. Rex Ryan. Rex Ryan's been out of the game for 7 years. Rex Ryan does not seem like a personality match on the 49ers staff. The 49ers staff is all business. Rex is, a lot of me, look at me, attention me. But the reason Rex is on this list is because Rex said on Sunday that he, in 7 years, has never called a head coach and said, "Hey, I'd be willing to come. You just want you to know, you could have me if you want me." And he did that with Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys because he feels like they got good players on defense and they're close to winning a Super Bowl and he could put them over the top. And coaching for the Dallas Cowboys, coaching the bright lights, that's what he would do. He wouldn't come back to coach not the bright lights, top 3 program in the NFL. But Sexy Rexy needs to be loved. And in Dallas, you get loved or hated, which is better than being indifferent. I think Rex would much rather be hated than have people not know he exists. So that's why he called Mike McCarthy. That's worth a conversation too. Just going to say this real quick and then move on. Nick Saban is available, but Albert Breer, here's another name for you. You guys are the chat probably hate this. This is what Albert Breer tweeted today. Wilks made the first outside the family coordinator hire that Shanahan has made. Number 2, along those lines, Brandon Staley has coached in that coaching family. It's also a disciple of Vic Fangio, who Shanahan tried to get in 2017. Brandon Staley had the number 1 defense his year with the Rams, the COVID year. But since then, in LA, with a lot of talent, he's had a bottom 3rd points per game defense, a bottom 3rd run defense. You would think that, yes, he is on the short list, but I know that'd be probably last on the list of people that would fire y'all folks up. A couple other names to get to before I get to my secret name. Remember last year, a name, you got to go back to last year's list. A guy that was intriguing was Chris Harris, passing game coordinator for the Titans, the cornerbacks coach for the Titans. He was an attractive candidate, I thought, last year. He then, in theory, would be a candidate again. The Niners already know him. They interviewed him last year. So, they have a sense for whether or not he would be a fit, right? They would know pretty quickly when he left the meeting last year. Yeah, that could be the guy. He interviewed for the Bears and one other team, Jags maybe, coordinator positions this offseason. Internal candidates, the same ones: Chris Kasarik, D-line coach, Johnny Holland, been around, Daniel Bullocks, Nick Sorensen. I think the guy, to me, that intrigues me from an internal candidate standpoint, and internal definitely might be the way they go, is Daryl Tapp, who This is a guy that played in the league for a long time. So he's kind of the D'Amico mold, played in the league for 12 years. He started out proving that he was willing to coach. He coached a little bit in the NFL, went to college, was at Central Michigan, went to Virginia Tech, which is his alma mater. When you watch this guy in practice, he grinds, right? He gets after it. He is really a hands-on coach. Steve Wilks was a hands-on coach, but from Washington now. Thank you, Rob. But Steve Wilks is a hands-on coach, and I think he would be I think he'd be on. He got hired at Washington. Tappan's gone. Haberman was out of pocket today. Not a good look for your boy. Well, with him knowing that this was going to happen, then yeah, that would be bad. Assistant D-line coach. All right, I was out all day at a lunch. My bad. But I guess you could make him the defensive coordinator. But I would say that he's not going to be, because you would have known that already. I know Anthony Lynn is gone. That much I knew. God, the chat comes through in the clutch sometimes. Thanks for getting my back, everybody. So there goes your internal candidate. The secondary guys, you do wonder, would Cal be scared off by a secondary coach after Steve Wilks? The sad thing about it is that you'd love to have Steve Wilks as your secondary coach. The DBs got better. I mean, you looked at Mooney Ward had the best year of his career, and Diamador Lenore is fantastic all of a sudden. So you'd have to give him some credit for that. Okay, so I'm going to get to let's see, have I mentioned everybody? Oh, a guy who got an interview last year was Glenn Schumann. Glenn Schumann, he's like the co-DC for the Georgia Bulldogs. The Eagles interviewed him last year, and he was an attractive name. All right, now I'm going to get to a guy who I'm familiar with and I like, and his name is Danton Lynn. Danton Lynn is Anthony Lynn's son. Danton Lynn has an incredible year this last year at UCLA. This I do know. Danton Lynn was hired at USC, away from UCLA, to become their defensive coordinator. So you might be thinking it sounds pretty risky to go with a college defensive coordinator, and there would be some risk involved. There's no question about it. But he's got a lot of NFL experience. He, as I said, is the son of Anthony Lynn. He started his coaching career. He played college football. He played at Penn State. Now, he was a DB, but I'm going to give you some of what his defense did this year, and I think you'll see that it's pretty impressive. He played briefly when undrafted out of Penn State, CFL for a second. He got his coaching start with the 2014 Jets under Rex Ryan. Then he went with Sexy Rexy to Buffalo in 2015 and 2016. Then his dad got the Chargers job, so he went and coached with his dad for a year. He went to the Bill O'Brien, Romeo Crennel Texans for 2 years, and then he went to the Ravens. So he got a year under Wink Martindale. He got a year under Mike McDonald 2 years ago, and then last year became the defensive coordinator at UCLA. He is 35 years old, somewhere in that range, and you would be buying low on a guy that is soon, I think people will be buying, who USC from a college standpoint just bought high on. So here's some of what his defense did last year. His defense was, and keep in mind, he's coaching for Chip Kelly, who loves the run game, but historically it's not an easy coach to be the defensive coordinator for. UCLA was number one graded by Pro Football Focus in pass rush last year, while also being 13th in the nation in run defense. They averaged, they ranked 8th defensively in the country last year in defensive yards per play. They were 28th in the country in blitz percentage, 22%, fine. But they were 7th in the country in pressure percentage. So he got to the quarterback. Now, he had some really good players. Leatu Latu, 13 sacks. This guy, you'll hear his name a lot as we get closer to the draft. One of the top pass rush sackers in the country. They're doing this, being 8th in the nation in yards per play. They did it in a very explosive league, keep in mind. Very offensive league last year. So 28th in blitz percentage, thanks to one of my researchers, Ryan McGrady, for getting me some of these advanced metrics. 28 on short notice, 28th in could have told me Daryl Tapp was at Washington. 28th in blitz percentage, but 7th in QB pressure percentage. They were second in the country in the total number of QB pressures. And they played man 21% of the time, which was 19th highest in the nation. Average time to throw defensively, 2.84 seconds, which was top 20 in the country last year. So you got to get the ball out fast against Danton Lynn's defense. So that's my secret candidate. I'm not saying the Niners like him or have any thought of it or that Kyle would go to a UCLA guy. With that in mind, I texted a person very close to the UCLA program, a former UCLA player who is around them on a very, very daily basis. And I asked him, what do you think about Danton Lynn? This person's been in the NFL. I said, would he fit in the NFL? He said, yes. You need to have talent like anybody else, but he has the personality to deal with NFL guys. He is smart enough to adjust his system to the talent. So that was a review from somebody at UCLA. This is a guy that will probably be an NFL defensive coordinator sooner rather than later. He kind of did his Mike Macdonald thing, the way Mike Macdonald went to the Michigan Wolverines, then came back to the NFL with the Ravens, and now is an NFL head coach. I think this guy, Danton Lynn, is on that same track. So I would investigate this thoroughly. Now, is the fact that his dad just left an indication that he already knows that Danton Lynn is not going to be a candidate for Kyle Shanahan, or that Kyle Shanahan, the fact that Daryl Tapp left, is that an indication that he already knows who the next guy is going to be? Does Kyle have an idea of an internal candidate? Maybe he does, right? Maybe Anthony Lynn would stick around if he had any hint, any sniff that his son was about to become the defensive coordinator of the 49ers. But this guy's got a challenging job ahead of him. He just went to SC. Maybe he would say no. Maybe he would say, I just got here. This isn't fair to Lincoln Riley for me to leave. The irony of that would be that SC could have just hired. Well, anyway, I don't know. I don't know if he'd be interested, but you'd have to think he'd be somewhat interested. This guy's going to be an NFL defensive coordinator soon. You could try and get to him right now. So I just wanted to go outside the box with a name and give you guys a few takes. I'm sure there's plenty of names I didn't get to here, but there's a few. I think I'm going through my list here. Anybody I didn't mention? Yeah, it's funny. There's not a lot of. It's hard to get a D'Amico. It's hard to find a linebacker. In theory, you go, all right, understands the pass game and the run game. But it's hard to find those guys. Vrabel, I guess Vrabel would be one. So, we got some in the chat. We got some Phil Parker suggestions. Iowa's defensive coordinator. Everyone looks at him like he's the guy. He's the reason Iowa wins football games. He was the he was the national assistant of the year. He's older. I don't know what his NFL experience is, if he has any. Yeah, he's a career college assistant. By the way, he's making $1.9 million as Iowa's defensive coordinator. I don't see that. I don't see that. Austin says Pete Carroll. Pete's interesting. And I've said this. I said it to Larry Kruger this morning. If you missed that stream, you can go watch it. I said it to John yesterday. I think the thing with Pete, and for those of you who saw it or listened, did it get on the podcast? I don't know if it got on the podcast feed. Things got so crowded last week in Vegas, I wasn't able to get everything on the podcast feed. So if you're listening to this and you didn't hear this, I would highly recommend you go to the YouTube channel, which is in the description of the pod. You can just click on the YouTube link and check out the interview I did. Just scroll back a couple videos. It wasn't a live, with a guy named Dr. Michael Gervais, Gervais. Dr. Michael Gervais was the high-performance psychologist for Pete Carroll in Seattle. worked very closely with him, tight with Pete. And I think maybe Pete wrote the forward to his book or something like that. But it was a really fun conversation, and he's a really impressive guy. And my opinion of Pete Carroll is that Pete, of all the guys we're talking about who don't need it, Bill and Vrabel, Rex, and Pete, that's the list of guys who like, I don't need it. I'm only going to come to the perfect situation. My perception, nobody's told me this, but my view of Pete is that Pete is the last guy of that group that would want to come be Kyle's defensive coordinator. First of all, he was not the defensive coordinator really at all. Not really. He wasn't the DC in Seattle. And it's not even about like ego. I just think go watch Pete Carroll's. I said this to Kruger today too. So for those who saw that, I'm repeating myself. But go watch Pete Carroll's exit press conference this year in Seattle when they announced that Pete would not be back. And it's really clear that Pete still wants to coach. But I think his greatest passion does not come from shutting himself in a dark room and breaking down the tape. I don't know. I could be wrong. But it seems to me his greater passion comes from leading a team, creating a culture. Creating the culture is not only it's really one of his, it might be his great skill. He is one of the greats at it, creating a culture of competitiveness, but also trust and fun and all that. And I think, the head coach is the one that does that. Sets whatever that culture is going to be. Now, could Pete come in? I'm not saying it's impossible. If you told me the Niners hired Pete Carroll tomorrow, I'd be like, that's all right. This is going to be fun. But it just doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like he wants to be a coordinator. He wants to lead an organization. It is one of his great skills. So, I don't think that would be his. I don't think that'd be his gig. Eric says Morgan Scalley from Utah. I mean, this is a very good coach. He's an excellent coach. I don't know what Kyle Whittingham's retirement plan is. Kyle Whittingham, the head coach at Utah, has been asked about his retirement plan a couple times over the last couple of years, or several times over the last couple of years. It's come up a lot. He is in fantastic shape. If you watched him roll into the McAfee show on a motorcycle this year, you can see he's in great shape. But I've talked to Kyle a lot. I've interviewed Kyle Whittingham a lot. He does not want to coach up until it's time for the home, basically. Like, I don't think he has a lot left. He has a lot of energy as a person, but I think he'll retire earlier rather than later, and that time is impending. And it seems like Morgan Scalley is the next head coach at Utah. So I guess he could go, but he would be like, he's the Niners and Utah football, I think, have similar coaching personalities. D'Anthony says, what about Ken Norton Jr., who's also at UCLA? He took the Washington linebacker coach job, but they could poach him away to be the Niners DC assistant head coach. The returns on him as a defensive coordinator when he was one were not strong. And so I don't think so. I don't think that's that would not be an option for them. David says, guys, be real. Belichick isn't signing as a defensive coordinator. Would Elon Musk sign on as the CTO? Absolutely not. That's a step back. There is a category of coach, and it might be hard. You might be right, David, that after having the power for a certain amount of time, you're not going back to that. But as I said to John yesterday, Chris Peterson, who left Washington a few years ago, always he would say from time to time, I always just kind of want to go back being the guy drawing up the plays. And I think if Bill wanted to do it, it would be because Bill really wants to coach, doesn't want to be away from football for a year. I do think he'd be good on television, but it'd be because Bill doesn't want to be away from football for a year, sees an opportunity to just coach ball, not mess with with less of the BS that the head coach has to, and get another ring. How do you add to your legacy if you're Bill? Well, winning another Super Bowl. Winning as a head coach, that would be one. Winning it as a DC. And this is where I think the fact that if the Niners had just won the Super Bowl and then fired Steve Wilks, then maybe it's a little more challenging. if you're Kyle, in an ideal world, you're the big cheese when your team wins the championship. But Kyle has said he doesn't care about the narratives. He just wants to win a Super Bowl. I think Kyle would do whatever it took to win a Super Bowl, shy of demoting himself. Who wants to do that? But if that meant handing the defense over to Bill Belichick, what does that mean for the head coach and the OC? I have to worry about it less. It's the same reason you draft Jake Moody, you think, so you don't have to think about it. So if Bill Belichick becomes his DC, A, he doesn't have to worry about the defense. B, I don't know how welcome he'd be in those meeting rooms anyway. C, I think he really, really, really respects Bill. Bill and his dad got along. Mike Shanahan and Bill Belichick had a good relationship. Bill Belichick had a quarterback named Jimmy Garoppolo, and he called Kyle first to say, I'm getting rid of this guy. You want him? I do think, and I've said this for a long time, that is an insight into what Bill Belichick thinks of Kyle Shanahan. So if you're Bill, is it a demotion if you go win a Super Bowl as the defensive coordinator and you're the guy that helps put Kyle Shanahan over the top? Yeah, I mean, you're not the head coach, so in that sense, it is a black and white demotion. But in another sense, it only adds to your legacy. So, yeah, I agree, it's a long shot. It feels silly in one sense. It's such a long shot, but I'd be all for it. So you got to put it this way: you make the phone call. That phone call, if you want to say like, oh, that's dumb or oh, that's unrealistic, that phone call is getting made. It's 1,000% getting made, and Bill is answering the call. And there'll be some story when the Niners hire whoever in a year. Oh, they did call Bill. Duncan, Idaho. We tried the Kelly tree once and promptly cut that tree down. Yeah, I mean, Danton Lynn is not in the Chip Kelly tree. He is a Rex. He's a Rex Ryan guy. When you go look at his history, 3 years with Rex and a year with Wink. And I mean, think about the guys he's been 3 years with Rex, Wink, McDonald. Like he coached for Bill O'Brien, coached with Chip. Like he coached with some hard ass dudes, and son of a coach. Kyle would have to be attracted a little bit, I think, to that. Spencer says, I feel like Bill might be a coordinator exception. No head coaching spots open. Hates TV. I think broke up with Cougar Linda. Did they break up? I think, I don't know if Bill hates TV. Saban's going to be on TV this year, as expected. I think Bill would be excellent on television. The fact that he kind of doesn't want to be there actually would make him interesting. He wouldn't be up there talking like every guy talks. And I'm going to take you over here to the board. Now you got cover 2 here. Now what do you do? He wouldn't do that bullshit, right? And I think that's part of what would make him attractive is he would just, I'm just here. I don't need the producer telling me like, giving me his topics. This isn't First Take. I'm here to just tell you what's up. So, from that standpoint, I maybe it's turning out, I feel like I'm kind of in the minority in thinking that Bill would be great on TV, but I think Bill would be good on TV. He was good in that NFL 100 thing. And I think he'd be good here. Now, would he rip coaches? I don't know. I don't think he would do that or players, but he'd be just excellent at so much of. There's a lot of people saying, giving us no analysis. I'm just going through some of your comments here now. Let's see what else we got. Lars says, was not surprised at all. Wilks was uncomfortable conforming out of the gate. Gave up long third down conversions all year with that stupid soft shell coverage and let several backs kill us on the edge. David, what about Wade Phillips? He always seemed to get the best out of defensive lines and linebackers. How old is Wade these days? What's Wade up to? Wade is 76 years old. Wade's been out of the game for a minute. Oh, no. Wade is coaching. Wade's got a job. He's coaching the San Antonio Brahmas. Brahmas. The Brahmas will. They are in the UFL last year. I don't know if he's back this year. He's back this year. They're in the XFL conference of the UFL, and his quarterback was Ben Kurt from the internet. So, did not know that. Brendan. Now, see, this would have been the best, but no, they can't. What about Jim Schwartz? Can we poach him from the Browns? That would be the ideal, but you can't. You can't. I thought that too. You just go get the guy who kicks your ass all the time. Magnetic Schemmel. His fate was sealed when Shanahan was forced to use a timeout to tell him not to run a defensive set in the Super Bowl. Yeah. Yes, it was. I tend to think it was sealed even before that. But I think he probably is gone no matter what happens in the Super Bowl. It's just a matter of maybe the timing would have been a little bit different. Wait till after the parade, I guess, if you win the Super Bowl. What about Brian Flores? Brian is the Vikings. Something happened with him? Isn't he still the Vikings defensive coordinator? Defensive coordinator of the Vikings still, unless something else happened. Legend Garcia. What about Mike Zimmer not signed by the Cowboys yet? Yeah. What? Well, there was another report yesterday that it was done. Have the Dallas Cowboys officially? I thought that was basically done. Is that? Yeah. Here we go. Cowboys. The Cowboys have. It's official. So that one. There was a period of time though, Legend, where that was up in the air for some reason. That was up in the air for some reason. But it just, I don't know, took time to get his money right, whatever. Ron Rivera, cow guy. For being February 14th, Valentine's Day, there's a lot of good candidates out there. I mean, you would hope that internally you could have, you would have some idea by the time you did this. If there's a guy you like internally, then the only reason you wait is because you're going to take a few Hail Mary shots at Bill, at Vrabel, that sort of thing. You go, otherwise, I'm going to, then I'll go to whoever, Daniel Bullocks or whatever. There's one other comment here I want to get to. Where'd it go? Somebody said, what about Brendan Daly? So the person who commented that, I'm sorry, I can't. There's so many comments here, I can't find them. Brendan Daly is Steve Spagnuolo's linebacker coach. I don't think he's ever been. Let me pull up his resume here. I don't think he's ever been a DC. He hasn't. Linebacker coach this year, D-line and run game coordinator last year, Bill Belichick staff for a few years in New England. He is Brendan Daly. How about this? Brendan Daly has more Super Bowls than the 49ers. Brendan Daly, this dude's got 6 Super Bowls. He beat the Niners to 6. That's incredible. Yeah, D-line coach under Belichick. That is incredible. You just got to get, and it's fine if Vrabel only coaches for a year, then you get Saleh back. You got to get a guy to get you, to bridge you to Robert Saleh in 2025. See, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. That is exactly what I'm talking about. Saleh when he gets let go. Larry today asked, somebody made a comment recently about How do I get this comment out here about Zach Wilson? By the way, no, thank you. Let me get this. Hold on. There we go. Get that thing out of here. Jeff Ulbrich from the Jets. Maybe I'm just biased. The Hard Knocks, didn't love the vibe. Do you think Kyle would bring in somebody who's been on the staff before, like Corey Undlin? Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think going back to guys who have left and taken coaches, D'Amico, I don't know the McDaniel. Who's he have on that staff? Dolphins defensive staff. That was around the Niners. Ryan Slowick is outside linebackers coach. Steve Donatel, son of a coach. I don't know that he has anybody else on that. I don't think he has anybody on that defensive staff now that went with him from the 49ers. Someone who can get Bosa to 20 sacks. I already told you can get Bosa to 20 sacks. Dan Lynn can get Bosa to 20 sacks. That's the guy right there. Dan Lynn. He get Bosa to, well, I don't know about 20. Nick Bosa would have 17 sacks next year. Ali, let me know which one it is. There's a vote for Glenn Schumann from Georgia. So, Spags assistant Dave Merritt. Okay, we're throwing names now. Let's throw some names. Dave Merritt, DB coach, 5-time Super Bowl champion. I don't know. Brendan Daly's got 6. These guys, man. These guys. He won 2 Super Bowls with the Giants. DB coach. It'll be interesting. Would Kyle shy away from a DB coach? Former player. Kyle would like that. Kyle likes a former player there. Rome. Who will replace Greenlaw? Oh God, I know. That would be. That's a sad one. DG would be shocked if Kyle gives someone a first-time chance that he isn't familiar with firsthand. I think it's a very fair comment. I'd be a little surprised as well. I would lean somebody he's coached with, but I think he's got to start with Vrabel and Bill, and then work backwards from there. Philippe says, Sherm? Is he making too much money on TV? I remember watching Sherman in practice. Kyle would want Richard Sherman to come coach for him before he just made him the defensive coordinator. You come coach for a year or two, and we see what you got, and then maybe we work up to it. But to come out of you don't just become a defensive coordinator like that. I'd have a hard time seeing it. I mean, Brian Griese came out of the TV booth to be the quarterback coach. Sherm to be the defensive coordinator? No. But I'd be very interested. Like, I thought Sherm, I remember John and I were standing there watching him. He was not practicing that day. I think he was still coming back from the injury. And he was just, he was like really into it and talking guys up and bringing a lot of energy. And I just remember going like, this guy's impressive. And I'd always heard that he was, because I have a buddy who played with him at Stanford when he was a receiver. And I've talked to some other Stanford people about him and some Seattle people about him. But, that's not how you do that. Super chat from Geodude. Bosa could had 4 sacks without the blatant holding. Yeah. Richard says, the thing about Bill, imagine Kyle trying to micromanage 6-time Super Bowl champion. I don't think Bill would put up with Kyle's mouth or undermining. I think Kyle would have to treat Bill differently publicly than you treat Steve Wilks. I don't think there's any question about that. But you also would have more, you would trust him more. Kyle did not have the implicit trust, and then it wasn't earned. Bill would have the trust. Bill would have the trust. Gold says, Bosa like his bro, got paid and fell off. Interesting to hear Bosa say what I think some of us suspected, that all the contract stuff did affect him to start the year. Not in a physical way, but in a mental way. How could it not? You think of all the things guys do to get themselves ready for football. And he did things to get ready, but very different than, all the things that he normally does. So, if you're looking for brighter spots, Bosa being ready to roll, a full off season for Brock Purdy, that's a significant thing. And you gotta overcome the green laundry. Thomas is someone who was haunted by the Giants as a kid. Would be a tough pill to swallow to have Belichick as the DC. What? What? A tough pill to swallow? No, it wouldn't. That would be the smoothest pill you've ever swallowed, Belichick becoming the defensive coordinator. It'd be so smooth. Are you kidding me? Mr. F this. Lynch came from the TV booth to GM. That's true. Different job, though. He had a full scouting staff already in place. His job is to manage. Being an in-game play caller is a different level of live bullets. We're trying to speak it into existence. Not your situation there, but Kyle and Bill. Oh, yeah. All right. That's that for this. Thanks to all you guys, all us guys together, you guys, me guy, everybody hanging. Appreciate it very much. I'll be back on Thursday morning with another live show. Going to be doing some AM live shows, and appreciate you guys being here for this, and hope to see you back there tomorrow. If you are watching this and you want to check out the podcast, it's down in the description below. I'm going to jump, and I'll see you soon. But thanks, everybody. Hit that like button, by the way. If you're here on YouTube, there's almost 900, 857 of you. Hit that like button on your way out the door. Sox Nation, why won't you ever have Lombardi on? I haven't had David Lombardi on. Would you like me to? I would like to. John and I were hanging out with Lombardi in Vegas the other day, and had a great time with him and his wife Margot, and John's girlfriend Maria, and a couple other folks. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, I'd 100% be down to do something with David. He does an awesome job, and I love his stuff. So that's a good idea. That's a good idea. We'll make that happen. All right. Hit that like button on your way out. Thanks for the suggestions and the feedback. And mostly thanks for the likes. Okay. Bye, y'all.